Hello! In this episode we're doing the tile for the mechanical room. We have some learnings from the shed, so let's get into it. So we have installed the decoupling membrane. This one is very important because it creates a separation between the floor and the tiles. So when the structure moves, then the tile, since it's separated from the floor, it's not going to crack. So, well, we have a few learnings from the glam shed. So if you haven't seen that, we have another series on the glam shed, but here is what we have learned. So you need to have a perfectly flat floor before you install the tile, which sounds pretty obvious, but honestly, we were a bit confident that when we installed the membrane, it would help us to level everything, but it didn't get to the point that we wanted. So now we have to do some workarounds to make this work. So what we have done here is we have applied a layer of Thinset just to try to level everything the best that we can. And if you're wondering why aren't we using self-leveling Thinset, is because once you have the membrane in place, you cannot use self-leveling anymore. So our learning for the future projects of the house is, instead of using Thinset for the radiant heat, we're going to be using self-leveling. That way, as soon as we finish the radiant heat, then the floor is going to be perfectly flat and level and ready for the membrane. When you install ditra, we aim for 95% or higher. So you just have to lift it and check it every so often. For example, we have a gap in here, we need to fill it up. Finding the fabric that we're going to use, and this step is super important to make sure that it looks like a professional job. So this one here is just a straight line, and the only thing we're doing is making sure that if we start with a full tile, when we get to the end, we're not going to end up with a ridiculously small piece like 1 inch or something. And then on this side we have the horizontal lines, and with these ones we have 3 because we are installing the tile in thirds. So this way we know the pattern for every single line that we're going to have. We can make sure that we're not going to end up with very small pieces at the end, and also that everything is going to look symmetrical.
As messy as tile can be, it requires you to be very precise, very clean, and have a process. So why don't we talk about it right here? First, the consistency of the Thinset needs to be thick. In other words, when you hold it with a trowel, it should not be falling off. Next, we set enough Thinset to where we're going to be putting the next tile, and we also define the thickness. This thickness is defined also by the trowel that you use. In our case, we're using a 1/4 inch trowel, so we want to have perfect coverage with it. Sometimes if you have difficulty with the Thinset sticking to the trowel, you can wet it lightly and it'll be a very nice way to prevent it from sticking to the trowel. Next, using the grooves on the trowel, you run the trowel through the Thinset, and the Thinset cannot have holes, otherwise you're missing Thinset. Note that I just cleaned my trowel, and we found that cleanliness is very important to have a nice tile job. What you see me using here is called the margin trowel, and its purpose is to clean, as its name states, the margin where you're going to be putting the tile. This step is very important because if you don't do it, you might end up with a dirty grout line that may end up causing you trouble down the line. Our next step is to use the sponge to clean where I just ran the margin trowel, and this step is very important because you don't want any thinset on your spin doctors because otherwise it'll be difficult to break them when you need to remove them. Now I install the spin doctor pins. And finally, we install our tile. Don't forget to back butter your tile to at least 95% or greater. And that is the process we follow to install tile. So let's carry on, we have a lot of work to do. Sweet, so we're at the point where we need to start making some holes for the plumbing, for the radon, for the emergency drain. Obviously, if you've done this before, you might know of the grinder and then basically the masonry blade. This is also used typically for making circles and holes for the piping. But that said, we decided to purchase our diamond bit borehole bits, I guess. They're not terribly expensive in Amazon. They might not be like the top-notch quality, but I mean, if you make 2, 3, 4 holes, I think it'll be worth it because they're very quick to make the holes. And now that I mentioned these guys, we also have these templates that we made with basically our borehole. And they basically serve 2 purposes. So for example, here I can mark where my hole needs to be. So that way I know exactly where to put my template. I put it on top. And then another huge advantage of having this template is you can clamp it, and then you can basically fill this hole with water. And it acts as a dam so that your borehole bit doesn't overheat. If you start seeing sparks and start making holes in a dry environment, you're basically killing your bore bit. And they're not cheap enough that you can just waste them. So I highly recommend you make yourself a bunch of these little templates. We'll just save them until they break, and we'll just keep making holes like this. So now let's jump on to the next tool. So this is really the main event of the tools. The name of this thing is called a shaping tool. And basically with this thing, you can make any kind of shape. In our case, I used it because the plumbing pipe, the 4-inch plumbing pipe, was actually bigger than our bigger boring tool. So basically what I'm doing is I use this to make the hole bigger, and then by using this tool, it continues to look beautiful. So I highly recommend this shaping tool. I want to talk real quick about our leveling system. We are using the spin doctor leveling system. And we have spoken about this before in our previous episodes, but if you haven't seen them, welcome to our channel. We hope you're liking the content. So basically the way it works is it has these little pins, and these pins are basically disposable. They basically go under the tile, and then they will help pull the tile up if it needs to be pulled up. Then what would come in is these little discs, and these are not disposable. The only disposable component is this little pin. They come in on top, and their main purpose is just to protect the tile from getting scratched when you put this little nut. So as you can see here, as you press, it pulls the tile from the bottom and it pushes from the top, and that helps level the tile very well. We highly recommend this system. The one thing is it's very, very important that you keep them clean. As you can see, we are done with the tile. We have grouted everything. It's looking much better than we did for the shed. So one thing, obviously, the consistency of the thinset makes a tremendous difference. That way you don't have to be cleaning all the grout lines beforehand, and that was a huge bonus. We didn't waste that much time as we did for the shed. Another big thing is that the level floor is very important. But another thing that's important is that at least we work in a 2-person team. So basically the first person comes, sets the thinset, puts the tile, and then the person behind that person comes and cleans and levels and applies the spin doctors. I'd say it's very important that that second teammate levels everything perfectly. We have a few kinks here and there that didn't work out as well as they should have. So anyway, that's one thing that we need to improve on a little bit. And yeah, one thing about grout, as you know, we mentioned grout dries very quickly, so we need to move very fast. But that itself is also a bigger problem, because we move so fast that we didn't do a great job in taking care of every single grout line. So my suggestion is to do a little batch, apply the lines carefully, and then do more batches. So do it less and a little bit with more time and care in applying of the grout. Another thing related to the on leveling, I think we're applying probably a little bit too much back butter. Because when you press it, it might squeeze. So I think I need to research that concept a little bit more. I don't know the answer. If you know it, we'd love to hear it. Any feedback, we'd love. We're getting up there to the professional level, but we're not there yet. Finally, let's talk about grout now. So you know, you apply the grout and then you clean it. I highly recommend that you use grout haze remover, basically from the get-go. Because if you don't use this chemical, you'll basically spend a lot of time cleaning. So applying this thing saved us, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, who knows. Finally, let's talk about the grout lines as well. Some grouts require it, some grouts don't, and that is this grout sealer. In our case, our grout doesn't require it, but we highly recommend it. Its purpose is basically to seal the grout and basically prevent it from changing color over time. So for example, we have a very white grout. If we let it be, it might just turn darker and darker and darker as the years go by. So this guy is very useful and we highly recommend it. And it's recommended that you apply it once every year. So yeah, with that said, this is not the last time you will see this dungeon. We'll be working a lot in this episode, in this season, inside this room. So thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.